Your Lana Del Rey says, doing what you love is freedom, and loving what you do is happiness. Doing what you love is freedom, and loving what you do is happiness. How many of us are enslaved? How many of us are in chains to things that we don't love doing every single day? All of us have our reasons. We have to work to provide for ourselves, for our families, for our loved ones. We have to find a way to pay the bills, to get from day to day to day to day to day, month to month, year to year. Some of us have good salaries. Some of us are able to, save up a nice retirement for when it's all said and done. But how many of us are actually doing what we love to do? I read a study the other day that said 85% of Americans are in jobs they do not want to be in. That's degrees and no degrees. I believe there's two pandemics that's going on in the world right now, and this all ties into something. I'm not going to keep you all day. There's two pandemics in the world right now. There's the one that we've been experiencing for the last 5 to 6 months, that being COVID-19. Whether you believe it's a pandemic, whether you believe it's a political skew, whether you believe in it or not in it at all, this is what they've identified it as, and this is what we're dealing with at this moment in time. But I believe there's another pandemic that's been happening from generation to generation to generation to generation that's expanded through all races. Not racism. I'm not talking about racism, even though that has. I'm not talking about racism, right? I'm not talking about chicken pox. I'm not talking about any physical disease. I'm talking about the pandemic of dying full. There's a quote out there somewhere that says, some of the richest ideas are in the grave. How many of us, because we're not doing what we love on a day-to-day basis, because we don't spend time to actually dive in and explore our passions and our dreams and the things that God has created us to do, how many of us are dying full and just satisfied with getting from day to day to day to day to day? Now, I'm not one of those people that's going to try to sell you that doing what you love is ultimately supposed to take care of you for the rest of your life. I don't know that. So I don't want to tie this to you having to do something you love to experience monetary gain. Because a lot of people don't get monetary gain from just simply doing what they love, but they get the peace of mind. I read another study that said people that do what they love or do what they're passionate about for at least 8.5 hours a month, experience significantly less issues in their mental health than the average person. So take the monetary gain out of it. How many of us do what we love to do just simply because it's good for the soul, it's good for our mind, it's good for our soul? Not a lot of us. 85% of people in America do not like the jobs that they are in. I usually don't start off the podcast like this, but I'm finding my voice again. Obviously, I'm solo dolo. It is Rock, coming to you like I do every episode. I want to thank everybody that's tuned in. I want to thank all of our new followers on Instagram. I want to thank you if you are streaming Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, iHeartRadio Podcasts. Shout out to everybody on YouTube. If you're tuning in, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to Apple Podcasts. Rate and review. That helps with the visibility of the show, visibility of the podcast. Welcome. Hello. You around, come. When I think about some of my deepest, darkest hours, when I think about the spaces where I didn't know if life in general was something I wanted to continue to do, one of the common denominators in that was I wasn't doing anything that I actually loved to do. I was barely going to the movies. I wasn't reading any books. Wasn't really tuned into a lot of hip hop. I mean, I was. Those are kind of givens. But what was I doing to challenge myself? What was I doing to expand on some of the gifts that I feel like God had given me? And I wasn't doing it. Once I started this podcast in 2018, it was before I really started to enter into this dark time of my life. I loved podcasts even before I started one. I love the idea of curating conversation so that people can express their opinions and that I can express mine. Because I'm not a big social media guy. I don't have my own personal social media now. I don't go out a lot. I'm not really a people person per se. But like everybody else, I have an opinion on everything. And this was a way that not only can I evolve and practice a talent I may have, but this was something that I felt like God was placing in part of my purpose for things that I just was naturally passionate about. I've been called, pastor, deacon, this, that, and the third. I won't claim to be any of those, but what I will say is that God has used this platform to even teach me a lesson in this moment in time. It's way bigger than me. Thankfully, it's just something I happen to love to do. And I think that there's a link in between what we love to do and what God has purposed us for. Whatever you're passionate about, whatever gets you up in the morning, whatever you can spend countless hours doing, whatever you can look at and say, I can commit myself. Wait, I'm not going to get in that. I'm going to give you that key. But I feel like whatever you're passionate about, whatever you love to do, and I mean truly love to do, something that you love to do so much that nobody has to pay you for, because I'm not getting paid for this. I just love to do it. Maybe one day you get paid, maybe I don't. But I just love to do it. But I'm talking about doing the thing that nobody has to pay you to do. There's purpose in that. I believe what you're passionate about in that realm is linked to the purpose that God has for you. And when I break it down in a parallel universe, how many of us are actually living in the purpose that God has for us if we're not doing what we love to do in general? Doing what you love is freedom. Loving what you do is happiness. And there's a lot of sad, angry, mad, frustrated, pissed off people in the world right now. Ask them how many of them are actually doing what they love to do. I'm not going to take all day on this. I'm going to go ahead and link up so we can get up out of here. I'm going to just give y'all a few tips that's helped me develop what I love to do. That's helped me understand why it's important for me to do what I do, or do what I love to do. Not only for the purpose that God has given me, but also for my mental health as well. All right? I feel like everybody has a call. Everybody has a call. My first tip is to pick up the call. Everybody has a call in life. No matter what your religious beliefs is, if you believe in Yahweh, if you believe in Allah, Buddha, whoever you believe your creator is, your creator created you with a calling. Like, a lot of us don't pick up the call because we're too busy picking up every other call that the world gives us. You're lazy, you're fat, you're this, you're that, you're not enough, you can't speak well enough, you're not athletic enough, you're not smart enough. We pick up all of those calls except the call that God is actually dialing to us and that He's actually given us, right? Whether you're a Christian or not, I want to point you to something that in the Bible that I read. It's from the prophet Jeremiah. He was speaking during the civil war in Israel. So just to give you some context, he was speaking to a certain tribe during the war in Israel, in the middle of a civil war in Israel. But I think this can be applied because a lot of us are in civil war with ourselves, in between doing what we love to do and doing what we have to do. He said in 29:11, this is Jeremiah 29:11, the ESV version, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare." In a lot of other versions it says good, but plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. And he was saying that in the midst of the civil war to let them know that no matter what happens at the end of the day, there's a calling and there's a purpose on each and every one of your lives. And whether you make it out of this war or not, even if you make it in this war or not, it might just be a part of your purpose. But whatever your purpose is, just know that it's for good, that he has good for you, and that it is a hope for you. Everybody has a calling, no matter what you believe in. I believe that. But at first, we got to pick up the call. We got to be tapped in to get the signs. And everybody gets tapped in a little differently. But we got to get the call when we pick it up. All right? You know. Imagine this. Imagine David not wanting to meet with Samuel. Samuel calls out, Jesse calls out to David because he intentionally keeps, David out of the meeting with the sons, because Samuel is trying to figure out who, this can't be all of them. Do you have another son? Imagine Jesse says, "David, come in. It's a man named Samuel that wants to meet with you." The prophet Samuel, the judge, the last judge, Samuel wants to meet with you. And David said, "Oh no." Imagine Joshua handing the baton to somebody else after Moses died. Both of them great warriors, both of them great leaders in their own right, picked up the call when it was time to go. Second point, create with the Creator. I'm constantly learning how to create with the Creator. What I mean by that is, again, the same guy that created you is the same guy that will constantly restructure and reflow and reinvent your creativity. I struggle with this if I do not spend time with the person that gave it to me, that being Yahweh, that being the God that I worship. But whatever your struggle is as far as once you get the call and you find yourself stagnated where you've hit a cap and you feel like you've plateaued and you don't have much more to give at that current moment in time, if you constantly tapped in with the person that gave it to you through meditation, through other spiritual practices or whatever, you want to constantly create with the Creator. Again, going back to the Bible that I read, Ephesians 2:10 says, "For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them." We're his workmanship. So, of course, our best work comes through him. And again, I don't know what your belief system is, but, whatever sparked your creativity, whatever sparks your passion, whatever you go to get your creative juices flowing is typically what allows you to continue to create, the greatness that you have whenever you pick up the call. And last but not least, commit to the plan. Commitment is key in this entire thing of doing what you love to do. Again, it's not necessarily about the monetary value that it affords you, but it's just about being committed to something other than the things that do not make you happy. Again, day-to-day life can bust our tail. Working a dead-end job can bust our tail. But if you're doing what you love to do, right? I told somebody this today that was wanting, to maybe start their own clothing line. I said, if you can look at anything, any avenue, any industry that's oversaturated, because everybody's starting a clothing line. If you can look at that, come up with a 6 to 7 month plan after doing amounts of research, get different keys to at least get you started, come up with a 6 to 7 month plan and say, I can do that, then that might be for you. But if in any moment that you come up with the first 2 to 3 months of the plan and you say, I don't know, I wouldn't suggest that you do it because it's not in your heart to do. I came up with a 6 to 7 month plan for this podcast and there was no way I was backing off, and I felt it was totally possible for me to do. And if I didn't have it, I was going to go get it to go do it. Commitment. A lot of us begin to do something that we love and we fall off. Commit to the plan. Give yourself an avenue to commit to something that pays you in your mental health, that pays dividends in things that people can't see. I think about this, and I think about a good brother that we just lost, Chadwick Boseman, and I'm wrapping it up. Awesome man, by everybody else's accounts, by his friends in Hollywood, family. And he is the epitome of what I would say is dying empty. And he's honestly a part of what sparked this whole rant. Because here's a man that was diagnosed with colon cancer in 2016, and since then has appeared in multiple Avengers movies, giving us 21 Bridges, Marshall, Message to the King, and actually just completed a movie prior to his death. Just had a movie come out this year called The Five Bloods. Talk about dying empty. Short but illustrious career. Now, obviously, he's been acting longer than the past, 4 years, but he's put in so much work and become one of the premier stars, especially when you're talking about black actors. He's the greatest black superhero that we've had. And this is coming from a kid who was raised on comic books and superheroes. He was my hero. We didn't have him growing up. I'm 27 years old. We didn't have somebody that looked like him growing up. As you can see, Black Panther. There's not really a lot I can say about him as an individual, or say about what I feel about his career, without necessarily getting emotional, because this was a tough one. Because I love film, because I love movies, and because he was one of the main guys that looked like me. He not only inspired kids, he inspired men like myself by just this role alone. But I loved him as James Brown. I loved him as Thurgood Marshall. I loved him as Jackie Robinson. He will be missed. But if there's anything I can take away from his life, that is to die empty, despite what anybody has to say about what you're doing. I'm gonna play a short stint from his from a commencement speech that he did. Chadwick Boseman will be missed, but because he died empty, because he died with nothing left in him, he's a legend. He's left us with work to be inspired by for generations to come, and because of that, legends never die. And he might not be with us here, but his work will live forever. His spirit will live on forever because of everything that he left. Just like with Cole leaving everything out on the court, going from winning championships to Oscar, just like Nipsey leaving everything out on his raps, finally becoming Grammy nominated, launching a global clothing store, leaving a legacy for his family to follow. Legends never die. And neither will Chadwick Boseman. So rest in power to Chadwick Boseman. And if you take anything away from his time here on earth, die empty. This is the Reach Over Culture podcast. I'm gonna play this short speech from his commencement speech. I pray that everybody has a good week. This is episode